They fired me effective immediately. The words came across that polished conference table like a slap to the face, delivered with the kind of casual authority you get from someone who's never spent a day on a factory floor. Beverly Carter, the newly appointed CEO of Midwest Automotive Components, didn't even look up from her tablet when she said it. Mid-30s, sharp blazer, Stanford MBA written all over her posture. She was scrolling through spreadsheets with her red stylus, circling line items like personal enemies. I'm Gerald Martinez, 47 years old, and I've spent the last 25 years building manufacturing systems that actually work. Not the kind that look good in PowerPoint presentations, but the kind that keep 1,800 people employed and $150 million in orders, flowing through 8 facilities across Michigan and Ohio. I sat there, hands flat on the table, watching her perform what she clearly thought was decisive leadership. Transition will be immediate. She continued, still not making eye contact. We're bringing systems management in-house. More efficient, better cost control. Behind her sat 2 people I'd never seen before. A nervous woman from HR clutching her tablet and a younger guy in an expensive suit who had consultant written all over him. No one from operations. No one who'd ever walked a production floor, just Beverly and her imported expertise. She finally looked up, bored and irritated, like I was wasting her time. Before you go, she said, tapping her stylus against the tablet, hand over the smart factory system, all of it access credentials, source code, documentation. We need everything by end of business today. The room went quiet. The HR woman shifted in her seat. The consultant stopped typing on his laptop. I didn't move, just sat there, keeping my face neutral, letting the silence stretch. Beverly's eyebrow raised slightly. Is there a problem? I smiled. The kind of smile you give someone when you know something they don't. I'm afraid I can't do that. Her stylus stopped mid-tap. Excuse me. The system, I continued, voice steady and professional. It's not yours to take. Beverly's confident posture shifted just slightly. A flicker of confusion crossed her face before the corporate mask returned. We paid for development. That makes it company property. I shook my head slowly. You paid for operational access, not ownership. The distinction is outlined clearly in Section 7 of your service agreement. The consultant leaned forward, whispering something to Beverly. She waved him off, eyes locked on mine. This is ridiculous. You can hold company infrastructure hostage. I'm not holding anything hostage, I replied. I'm simply clarifying what you legally control, which as of this moment is absolutely nothing. What Beverly Carter didn't know, what her consultant and her HR team and her entire cost optimization plan had completely missed, was that the smart factory control system running Midwest's entire operation wasn't software sitting on their servers. It was custom-built infrastructure I owned personally, licensed for their use, controlled from hardware they'd never seen. And when they terminated my contract 3 minutes ago, they just disconnected themselves from the only thing keeping their manufacturing network from collapsing. In 48 hours, that oversight would cost them everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and show you exactly how a manufacturing systems engineer with 25 years of GM experience got fired by someone who thought factory automation was just an app on a dashboard. I started at General Motors right out of college, back when American manufacturing meant something. Spent 8 years on the floor before moving into systems integration. Learned early that manufacturing isn't about dashboards and data visualization. It's about understanding how physical machinery interacts with control systems in real time under real pressure. My old man worked the assembly line at GM for 30 years. Union man through and through. Taught me that you never trust management when they say they're looking out for the workers. They'll smile at your face and hand you a pink slip, he used to say. But if you know something they need, you got leverage. When GM started their efficiency improvements in 2019, I saw the writing on the wall. Watched 2,800 good people lose their jobs because some consultant convinced management they could run the same production with half the workforce. These were skilled trades, guys who could rebuild a transmission with their eyes closed, replaced by robots and algorithms. That plant closure didn't just kill jobs, it killed a community. Main Street businesses shuttered within 6 months. Kids moved away, looking for work. Families that had been in that town for generations just scattered to the wind. That's when I went independent. Built my first custom ERP integration in 2020 for a Tier 2 supplier in Ohio. Word spread quietly through industry circles. The kind of reputation that gets you calls when someone's operation is falling apart and conventional solutions have failed. I don't have a fancy LinkedIn profile. Don't post about Industry 4.0 synergies or digital transformation journeys. My clients find me when their systems are broken and their MBA consultants have no clue how to fix them. They want someone who understands that behind every clean metric and automated report, there's physical equipment that has to function flawlessly under real pressure. That's how I ended up working with Midwest Automotive Components 5 years ago. Victor Reynolds, their VP of operations at the time, called me on a Thursday afternoon. His voice had the tight edge of someone staring at disaster. "Gerald, we just failed our third quality audit in 6 months," he said. "OEM contracts are threatening cancellation. I need someone who understands how this actually works, not another consultant who learned manufacturing from case studies." Victor was old school, came up through the ranks like my old man, spent years running production before moving into management. He understood that behind every clean dashboard and automated report, there's physical equipment that has to function flawlessly. More importantly, he understood that the guys running that equipment knew things that couldn't be learned from a textbook. When I walked into their main facility that first day, the chaos was immediately obvious. Production lines stopping and starting with no coordination. Quality control running blind because their vision systems couldn't talk to their assembly robots. Predictive maintenance alerts going nowhere because nobody knew how to interpret the data. "We've got 7 different software platforms that don't communicate," Victor explained, walking me through the production floor. "Assembly uses one system. Quality control uses another. Maintenance scheduling is basically manual. Every shift change, we lose 2 hours just trying to synchronize operations." The place reminded me of the GM plant before they modernized it in the early 2000s. Good bones, solid equipment, but everything running in silos. Line speeds inconsistent, scrap rates through the roof, throughput numbers that made no sense when you looked at actual capacity. "Your biggest bottleneck is information flow, not production capacity," I told Victor after walking the floor for 3 hours. "You've got operators making decisions with stale data, supervisors working off different metrics than quality control, and maintenance running blind because they can't see real-time equipment status." Victor nodded. "That's what I figured, but every consultant we've brought in wants to replace everything with some off-the-shelf solution that doesn't fit how we actually work." I spent the next 18 months building them a real system, not some package that kind of works if you bend your entire operation to fit it. Custom control algorithms that learned the specific rhythms of their 8 facilities. Predictive maintenance that actually predicted failures before they happened. Real-time quality monitoring that caught defects at the source, not at final inspection. My converted barn workshop became command central for the project. I'd drive out there every morning before dawn, fire up the control panels I'd built from scratch, and monitor system performance across all their facilities. The setup looked like something from the old GM days: Snap-on toolboxes, American-made test equipment, workbenches built to last 50 years. Tools my old man would recognize and respect. 15,000 lines of code. Every algorithm, every database structure, every hardware interface built from scratch and tested until it ran without failure. The results were immediate and measurable. 0 unplanned downtime. Defect rates dropped from 2.1% to 0.06%. OEM metrics that made their customers actually compliment them instead of threatening contract cancellation. Victor would send me detailed quarterly reports, not corporate thank you notes, but substantive analysis of efficiency improvements and cost reductions. Line speed increases. Scrap rate reductions, throughput optimization that actually translated to bottom-line results. The contract was crystal clear because I'd learned this lesson the hard way years ago. They licensed operational access to my system. I retained complete ownership of all source code, algorithms, and infrastructure. Victor signed without hesitation because he understood the difference between using something and owning it. For 5 years, everything ran perfectly. Monthly payments arrived on schedule like clockwork. The system performed exactly as designed. Victor would call occasionally with questions about capacity expansion or new equipment integration, always respectful of the boundaries we'd established. Professional relationship between people who understood manufacturing. Then Victor retired. 3 weeks later, Beverly Carter arrived with her MBA from Stanford and her tablet that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Her first communication wasn't a greeting or introduction. Subject line: third-party vendor cost analysis. The email was pure corporate optimization language about recurring expenditure structures and dependency risk reduction. Words like streamline, synergies, and cost optimization. My invoice hadn't changed in 5 years. Same amount, same delivery schedule, same scope of work. But Beverly saw a line item on a budget sheet and immediately assumed there was fat to trim. Legacy cost, she probably called it. Dead weight from the previous administration. I replied professionally, attaching the original contract and a summary of system performance metrics over the past 60 months. Zero downtime. Consistent quality improvements. Measurable cost reductions that had saved them millions. Her response came back within 2 hours. Need to schedule comprehensive review of all external service dependencies. Please prepare full documentation for internal assessment of operational systems. Operational systems, that phrase told me everything I needed to know about Beverly Carter. She was the type who thought complex manufacturing infrastructure could be understood by reviewing slide decks and reading executive summaries. Probably learned about manufacturing from Harvard Business Review case studies. 4 days later, the email arrived that confirmed my suspicions. Subject line: System Architecture Documentation Request. Beverly wanted a complete copy of the system for internal assessment and potential transition planning. She didn't want to review our service agreement or discuss performance metrics. She wanted to take my system and eliminate the monthly payment. I sent back a response that was technically accurate and deliberately unhelpful. Happy to provide all materials included under your current operational license. Then I walked out to my converted barn workshop, sat down at the master control panel I built specifically for Midwest's system, and started preparing Beverly Carter's education in the difference between access and ownership. The barn still smelled like motor oil and cutting fluid from when my old man used it as his workshop. He'd rebuilt everything from lawnmowers to diesel engines in this space. Now it housed something he never could have imagined: a custom control network that coordinated manufacturing operations across 2 states. 3 days after my documentation response, another email landed. Subject line: Intellectual Property Clarification. Beverly wanted written confirmation that all operational software logic belonged to Midwest Automotive Components. Operational software logic. That's what she called 5 years of custom manufacturing algorithms, predictive maintenance protocols, and real-time coordination engines. Like it was a commodity asset she could inventory and reassign. Probably had some McKinsey consultant tell her that all vendor relationships should be simplified and internalized. I screenshot the relevant contract clause and sent it back. Bold text impossible to misinterpret. All system architecture, source code, design logic, and operational infrastructure remains the exclusive property of Gerald Martinez, licensed for operational use only. No transfer, replication, or derivative development permitted without explicit written authorization. Victor Reynolds had understood that clause perfectly when he signed it 5 years ago. You don't buy a custom manufacturing system like you're purchasing office equipment. You license access to infrastructure that took years to develop and requires constant maintenance from the person who built it. Beverly's response arrived 6 hours later. We will be transitioning to internal systems management effective immediately. Final payment will be processed per contract terms. Thank you for your service. That was it. No discussion, no transition planning, no acknowledgement that she was about to disconnect the central nervous system of an 8-facility manufacturing operation. Just corporate speak for "you're done, and we're keeping your work." I sat at my desk for a long moment staring at that email. Then I walked out to my workshop. Inside that converted barn sat the physical control infrastructure I'd built specifically for Midwest's network. Custom hardware interfaces with dedicated circuits for every major subsystem. Production coordination, quality monitoring, predictive maintenance, equipment synchronization, all of it flowing through boards I'd assembled and programmed by hand. Beverly Carter had no idea that Control Panel existed. She thought the system was software running on Midwest servers. She was about to learn the difference between a user interface and actual operational control. 6 days after her termination email, a calendar invite appeared. Systems transition meeting Friday 10 a.m. Eastern. No agenda, no context, just a meeting title suggesting she expected this to be a simple handoff conversation. I joined the video call 3 minutes early. Professional appearance, clean button-down shirt, background showing my home office with my engineering certifications and 25 years of GM service awards visible on the wall. The kind of credentials that used to mean something before MBA consultants decided experience didn't matter. Beverly logged in 2 minutes late, settling into her chair. She looked satisfied, like she'd solved everything with cost-cutting. Albert Newman from IT joined next, according to his screen name. Then a woman who looked fresh out of business school, tablet in hand, ready to take notes. Victor Reynolds was nowhere on the call, not surprising. He'd probably advised against this entire approach, and Beverly had decided his operational experience wasn't relevant to modern business strategy. "Gerald, thanks for joining," Beverly began, her tone suggesting this was routine administrative business. "We've made the decision to bring systems management in-house. Appreciate all your work up to this point, but we're ready to assume direct operational control. Assume control, as if navigating through dashboards was the same thing as running the underlying infrastructure. I kept my expression neutral. "You're terminating the license agreement." "Correct," Beverly said, leaning back like she expected praise for her decisive leadership. "We'll need complete handover of all code repositories, system architecture documents, and back-end credentials. Standard transition process." Albert nodded along. The note-taker typed something into her tablet. They had this choreographed like routine vendor management. Probably had a checklist from some consulting firm about how to eliminate legacy dependencies. "You're not licensed to access the core infrastructure," I said calmly. "Your agreement covers operational use of system outputs. You never purchased ownership rights." Beverly's confident smile faltered slightly. "We paid for development of this system, Gerald. That makes it company intellectual property. This is standard business practice." "You paid for operational access to a functioning manufacturing network," I replied. "You never bought the underlying technology. That distinction is outlined explicitly in Section 7 of your contract." She glanced off camera, probably pulling up the contract on another screen. I waited while she scanned through language that Victor Reynolds had reviewed carefully with their legal team 5 years ago. Language that protected both parties when people still understood the difference between licensing and ownership. "Look," she said, attempting to regain control, "we understand there might be some technical nuances here, but we're prepared to handle operations internally going forward. Just provide whatever documentation you have so we can maintain service continuity. I'll provide everything you're legally entitled to receive," I said. Nothing more. The silence across the video call was sharp. Albert looked uncomfortable. The note-taker stopped typing. Beverly's jaw tightened as she realized this wasn't going to be the smooth asset transfer she'd planned. "That'll be fine," she said curtly, trying to end the call quickly. "We'll expect full delivery by close of business today." I didn't respond, just sat there looking directly into the camera while she fumbled with her mouse, clearly wanting to disconnect before I could complicate her timeline further. The screen went black. I closed my laptop and walked out to my workshop. Every indicator showed green. Production lines synchronized across 8 facilities. Quality metrics updating in real time. Predictive maintenance algorithms running flawlessly across 73 stations, the entire Midwest manufacturing network running exactly as I designed it. Then I started building Beverly's transition package, professional-looking documentation with clean diagrams and impressive technical language, user interface screenshots showing dashboard layouts and data visualization panels. Everything polished and official and completely useless without access to the underlying control systems. I spent 6 hours creating exactly the kind of deliverable Beverly expected to receive. Visual materials that would make her think she'd gotten what she needed to operate independently. Interface mock-ups with animated displays, system diagrams showing logical flow of operations, all of it disconnected from actual infrastructure. By 5:30 p.m., I had a comprehensive package ready. I attached it to an email with a single line. System interface documentation provided per contract termination. Back-end infrastructure access not included per licensing agreement. I hit send and watched the message disappear into Midwest's corporate email system, where Beverly would soon discover the difference between owning a control panel and owning the engine. Then I walked back to my workshop, sat down at the master control console, and placed my hand on the primary power relay. The real education was about to begin. The next morning, I drove to Dorothy's Diner like it was any other Friday. A small place near the interstate where truckers and plant workers grabbed coffee before their shifts. Good coffee, quiet corner booths where you could work without interruption. Dorothy Jensen, the owner, had been serving me the same order for 3 years. Black coffee, no cream, wheat toast, scrambled eggs. She nodded when I walked in, poured the coffee without asking, and left me alone with my laptop. I opened the administrative console and brought up the main operations dashboard. Every indicator glowed green. Production flowing smoothly through 73 synchronized stations across 8 facilities. 850 machines receiving real-time coordination updates. Quality control system cycling efficiently through 22 inspection points. Everything Beverly Carter thought she now controlled was actually flowing through the custom hardware sitting in my barn workshop 20 minutes away. At 9:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text message from Beverly, having difficulty accessing root management interface. Please provide admin credentials immediately. I stared at the message for about 15 seconds, then deleted it without responding. She was probably staring at user interface screens that looked functional but weren't connected to anything real. Like trying to drive a car by watching a video of someone else driving. At 9:52 a.m., I toggled the master relay switch. The dashboard on my screen froze instantly. Every green indicator went gray. Real-time data feeds dropped to 0. Production synchronization stopped mid-cycle. The entire Midwest manufacturing network just stopped communicating. I took a slow sip of coffee and watched 5 years of perfect coordination die in complete silence. The system didn't crash or throw error messages. I designed it to disconnect gracefully. No alarms, no warning indicators, no dramatic shutdown sequences, just clean separation from all operational control. If someone tried to restart the user interface, it would load perfectly and display the last cached data, creating the illusion that everything was still working. But underneath, nothing was actually communicating with anything else. For the first 20 minutes, nothing appeared wrong to casual observation. Dashboard displays still showed green status indicators. Floor supervisors looking at their screens would see normal production metrics and quality readings. Assembly workers already at their stations would continue following their last received instructions, but no new coordination data was flowing anywhere. At 10:14 a.m., an assembly robot at Station 7 sat motionless, waiting for a coordination signal that would never come. The downstream conveyor kept running, creating a backup that would cascade through the entire line. At 10:23 a.m., 2 quality inspectors arrived at the same checkpoint. According to their handheld displays, both had valid assignments for inspection Bay 12 at the northern facility. The conflict prevention algorithm wasn't running. By 10:35 a.m., the ripple effects became visible across the network. Production bottlenecks at 9 major stations. Quality backlogs forming at inspection points. Scheduling systems showing everything on time and synchronized, but ground reality telling a completely different story. At 10:44 a.m., the first confused email arrived. Subject line: quick question, data sync delay. Hey Gerald, seeing some weird lag on production updates. Can you take a look when you get a chance? Thanks, Howard Phillips. Howard was one of their senior floor supervisors, former Navy, good instincts. He'd figure out what was happening eventually. But right now, he was just seeing symptoms. By 10:58 a.m., the emails were arriving every few minutes. Production data not refreshing. Quality metrics frozen, multiple workers showing same station assignment. Still polite, still assuming this was some kind of technical glitch that could be resolved with a quick phone call. At 11:03 a.m., my phone started ringing. Unknown number with Midwest's area code. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call from a different number, then a third. The panic was beginning. By 11:25 a.m., the situation had deteriorated significantly. Production gridlock at 14 major choke points across 2 states. Quality control conflicts at 23 different inspection stations. Assembly schedules falling behind by an average of 73 minutes across the network. And somewhere in a corporate office, Beverly Carter was probably staring at user interface screens that still showed everything functioning normally, wondering why reality didn't match her data. At 11:32 a.m., an email arrived with red priority flags. Subject line: URgent, critical system failure. Multiple operational conflicts, no response from coordination controls, quality assignments completely desynchronized. This is affecting OEM contracts and delivery schedules. Need immediate support. Please respond ASAP. Albert Newman, IT Director. The corporate politeness was cracking. They were starting to understand this wasn't a minor technical issue. I closed the email without reading the rest and checked the impact calculator I'd built into my monitoring tools. Conservative estimate: 2.3 million in daily losses from halted production, missed schedules, and quality violations. Real number was probably higher once you factored in OEM penalties and contractual breaches. My phone buzzed with a text from Beverly: emergency situation. Call immediately. I deleted the message. By noon, I had 67 missed calls and 34 unread voicemails. The 8-facility manufacturing network was experiencing what GM would have called a cascading systems failure. Nothing was coordinating with anything else. Assembly workers were making decisions based on stale information. Floor supervisors were issuing conflicting instructions. Production managers were trying to manually assign station schedules, while their computers insisted everything was running smoothly. At 12:53 p.m., the calendar invite arrived. Emergency conference call 1 p.m. Eastern. Immediate response required. No polite language, no corporate pleasantries, just panic and capital letters. I joined the call at 12:57 p.m. Professional appearance, calm demeanor, sitting in my home office with my engineering certifications visible in the background. The screen filled with stressed executives in various stages of crisis management. Norman Clark, some kind of senior VP, joined first, sleeves rolled up. He looked like he'd spent the last 3 hours in emergency meetings. Then came legal counsel. 2 attorneys, one taking rapid notes, the other reviewing documents on a second monitor. Howard Phillips appeared next. He looked exhausted but unsurprised, like he'd been expecting this conversation for weeks. Beverly Carter was already in the call when I connected, positioned in a small window at the bottom of the screen. Muted microphone, tight body language that suggested she'd been removed from leadership of her own crisis. Nobody said hello. Norman cleared his throat and launched straight into damage control. Gerald, appreciate you joining on short notice. We're dealing with what appears to be a significant operational disruption. Our entire network is essentially paralyzed, and we need to understand our options for immediate restoration. I nodded once. Your service agreement was terminated yesterday. If you want operational access restored, the terms are outlined in my emergency proposal. One of the attorneys leaned into her camera. Gerald, we've reviewed your proposal. Some of the financial terms seem disproportionate given the circumstances. Emergency response pricing, I replied. Standard practice when critical infrastructure fails during business hours. Howard spoke up, his voice tight with controlled stress. Gerald, we've got 8 facilities completely offline. Production backing up across 2 states. OEM contracts accumulating penalty violations by the hour. 3 major customers have called threatening contract termination if we don't restore normal operations by Monday morning. Norman jumped back in. Look, we understand there may have been some miscommunication during the transition process, but we need to focus on solutions here. Can we discuss modification of the emergency terms? No. The single word hung in the digital space. No explanation, no negotiation, no corporate back and forth, just a simple statement of fact. Beverly finally unmuted her microphone. This is unreasonable, Gerald. You're holding our entire operation hostage over a contract dispute. I looked directly into the camera. You terminated my services and demanded handover of infrastructure you never purchased. I provided exactly what your contract entitled you to receive. Nothing more, nothing less. One of the attorneys tried a different approach. Would you consider a modified payment structure? Perhaps installments over a specified period. Wire transfer only. Full payment before reactivation. Howard leaned forward. Gerald, what's the timeline for restoration once payment clears? 30 minutes, I said. System comes back online immediately after I confirm funds transfer. Norman looked at his legal team, then back at the camera. We need 10 minutes to discuss internally. I nodded. I'll be here. 27 minutes later, my banking app chimed with an incoming transfer notification. Payment confirmed. Amount correct. 3 times my normal monthly rate. No complications. I walked out to my workshop, sat down at the master control panel, and flipped the relay switch back to active position. Every screen lit up with green indicators. Production nodes reconnecting in sequence, quality algorithms resuming, predictive maintenance coming back online, equipment synchronization updating in real time. The 8-facility manufacturing network came back to life like someone had just restarted the circulatory system of a major industrial operation. For the next 72 hours, I monitored system performance from my kitchen table. Everything ran flawlessly. Production synchronized perfectly. No quality conflicts, no coordination issues, no missed delivery windows, and no communication from Midwest Automotive Components. On Tuesday morning, a new email arrived from Ralph Henderson, VP of Strategic Operations. Someone brought in specifically to handle the aftermath. The offer was substantial. 5-year exclusive contract with enhanced compensation. Professional language, respectful tone, explicit acknowledgement of intellectual property ownership. 3 weeks later, the signed contract arrived. Every clause exactly as I'd written it. No modifications, no negotiations, no corporate wordsmithing. Beverly Carter's name was nowhere on the signature page. Word travels fast in manufacturing circles. By the end of the month, I'd received inquiry emails from companies in Detroit, Indianapolis, and Louisville. They'd heard about what happened with Midwest. They knew what occurred when someone tried to take custom infrastructure from someone who understood the difference between using something and owning it. If you're listening to this and you've ever built something valuable, remember this: protect what you create before you're forced to defend it. Read every contract. Understand every clause. Know the difference between licensing access and surrendering ownership. And when some consultant with an MBA and zero operational experience tries to tell you that 25 years of building things doesn't matter, remember Gerald Martinez. Remember that expertise has value. Remember that the people who actually make things work deserve respect. Manufacturing isn't an app. It's not a spreadsheet. It's not a dashboard you can hand off to the lowest bidder. It's infrastructure. It's expertise. It's years of understanding how things actually work, not how they look in PowerPoint slides. The real power isn't in owning the factory or signing the paychecks. It's in being the only one who truly understands what keeps the lights on. Experience isn't just years on the job. It's the wisdom to build systems so solid that even the people trying to steal them can't break them when you're gone. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The guy who knows how to keep the machines running will always have more power than the guy who only knows how to read the reports.